Hey, gang. Coming to you from my hotel room here on the road in the southeast. Well, I checked the comments. We had 280 comments, questions as of last night on the Q&A. So let's do this. Let's go through it. A lot of great questions. A lot of them you guys want to know about me, and kind of shy, and I never really wanted my name. It's just more to tell the stories. But you know what? Yeah, I'll share a little bit about what's going on in my life. And there's a lot of other good questions about some of my experiences and some of the strange stuff maybe that's happened. So let's get into it. What I did was I took the questions that you had. We can't go through 275. A lot of them, which is good, are a little bit repetitive, but I copied them down, and there's kind of two groups. One is, who's up first. So I did the sort on newest comments first, and then I went to the bottom, first people. And then I did the sort on most popular, I guess it is. So we'll see how, how YouTube does that. So I did kind of two groups of questions, and I think we covered most everything. I put them on my iPad here, so I will just kind of roll right into it with first in. So the first question is from Kathy Dobbs, and again, from many people. What made you get interested in traveling to different cemeteries? What inspired you? Well, it started when I was 8 years old, and we've talked a little bit about it on some of the lives. I grew up next to a cemetery, and it wasn't even as much the cemetery and the gravestones, but it was those oval pictures. And I remember me and my friend would ride our bike through there. And then I had a fascination also with the mausoleums. We'd see the mausoleums, and we'd look inside, and what does the body look like? 8 years old even, you're like, ooh, it's all taboo. But those oval pictures, it was really captured me, especially when I was alone. I would look at them, and it was like a walk back in time. And even at 8, 9, 10 years old, because I would continue to go back, I would say, who were they? They had lives just like I'm having a life, but they're gone. It's just was really intriguing. So that's what got me into it. And then I went to cemeteries on and off. I didn't do it like crazy growing. I really got more back into it later in life. When I go on my Arctic expeditions, or travels, I'd always look for the cemetery. But it was COVID. When COVID hit, and we'll get into that, I was a bush plane. I am a seaplane pilot, and flying my own seaplane. Well, I've got seaplanes, worked my way up, and my goal was to do these expeditions looking for these lost English sailors in the Arctic from the 1800s, and that's another story too. But everywhere that the plane would take me, I was curious about the cemeteries. But it wasn't until COVID hit that I really stopped flying. Was supposed to do a trip to Alaska with the family, and it was kind of the crescendo. I'd taken my boys to Alaska 2 years before. I'm like, we're going to come back in our Caravan, which was a pretty sweet airplane, is a pretty sweet airplane for an expedition like that. Very safe, turboprop. Anyway, COVID hit, and it just shut everything down. So I found myself, I was like, well, I'll go to the cemetery. Actually, it was a YouTube I saw of a woman who did a story on the little girl who was 4 years old, from the Czech Republic, and she was murdered. And anyway, it drew me to, I want to see her grave. And then I was watching some cemetery channels, and I said, I'll just bring my video camera along. And my philosophy was, if people want to watch, great. If they don't, I'm just going to go where I want to go and what intrigues me. And that's been my philosophy the entire time. So that's a little long-winded background on how this channel started, and here we are. Sylvia Wright had a couple of questions. How can I submit an idea? Email's the best. facesforgottentoday@gmail.com. If you go to the About section in the tabs, then you can email and Instagram are there. And Instagram too. Instagram's great. Email, I don't check once a day max. But if you have a lot of information, email is going to be better. Do you ever film an open case? Not too often. Again, going back to, I go to what intrigues me, and for some reason it's like when I watch the cold case and all the murder stuff on TV, ID channel in 2020, all of that stuff, I always want to see the face of the killer. It gives me like a satisfaction, like, they got caught and there's that face. But I have done a few, I think I've done a few. I know I did Diane Oakwitz, which was in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, and that's the one I put a post on. I just wish they would, hopefully they are analyzing the blood DNA that I think they have of the killer. Joe Rodriguez, if you'd have to pick one cemetery that you visited, which would be your favorite and most surprising? Well, that definitely has to be Natchez City in Mississippi. And it's stunning. It's a walk back in time. A lot of stories there. I want to go back. It's, for me, the drive I was making, New Orleans and up and around, it's a little out of the way. I guess if you're coming from Texas, it's not, or from the northwest coming in, but it was worth the drive. And you go through, like going north out of there, you go through this, I forget what it's called, something trace, and it's an unbelievable woods. Don't speed though. A woman blew by me on the left. I'm like, oh, she's gonna, and sure enough, cop coming the opposite way, got her. Chris Ara Sexy Diva. Why did you start this? Well, again, I kind of explained that. The actual trigger was COVID. And she asks, have you seen a ghost? I haven't seen a ghost in a cemetery, but I did see a ghost, an apparition, when I was much younger in the college days. And I did an episode on it. His name was Jonathan, a boy that was killed, hit by lightning, standing by his bedroom window. And me and Mike Flashberger were in the room. Girls were screaming. I had my sister and her girlfriend. It was dark, glass, it was a burned out house. We're upstairs in his bedroom where it happened. There's the blood. And then we looked up in the corner, I'll never forget. And then we heard the crying. So check that episode out. But yeah, I haven't seen any ghosts or apparitions in any cemeteries or mausoleums. Let's see, we've got Marlene Pearson. I see people are wondering if you're married. Yes, I am married, happily married. I've got 4 kids. I've got 3 sons and 1 daughter. Well, our daughter, we have her, but she's passed away. She was killed in a head-on collision in Colorado. That's another story that happened several years ago. D. Chick. Hi, you said you were a pilot. Like to hear a bit more. Well, yeah, I was talking about being a seaplane pilot. So I flew seaplanes. I actually got into piloting about 25 years ago, only because I wanted to become a seaplane pilot, because I'm big about hiking and adventure, and I'm an explorer. And I have another channel actually called Bush Pilot Explorer. It's not active right now, but it's got a lot of stuff from that. If you want to learn more about that, you can just search for it. It'll come right up. There's a guy with a sat phone, that would be me, stuck on top of the airplane. And another emergency situation, a lot of thrills and spills, but that's what got me into it. So I did a lot of exploring with that, mostly in Canada, from Ontario to Manitoba, Northwest Territories, up in Nunavut, all the way up near the magnetic North Pole. A lot of experiences with wildlife, good experiences, polar bears, bad experiences a couple of times. I was stalked once out on the ice pack. I've got video, I've got pictures, almost bought it, but and again, another story. So searching for the wreck of the Franklin expedition, I did find Erebus in 2011, photographed it from the air. And there's actually a book being written. I'm not going to market it now. I will market it to you guys when it comes out. But there's an author in San Diego, Walt Myers, pretty good author, wanted to pick up the story, and we've been working on it. He's been working on it for about 1.5 years. I should say 2 years, and about 3 years ago, really triggered that was not only the adventures, the Arctic expeditions for 15 years, looking for the sunken ships and everything from, like I said, the polar bears to a Russian sub surfacing, in the ocean, to just wild stories. And by the way, I do have pictures of the Inuit cemetery in Cambridge Bay. But anyway, enough on that. We've got Warren Krum. Have you ever been to a grave about the person's death that hit close to home? Yeah, I would say there are a few. The one that jumps out most is at Mount Carmel when I was early starting out, the Salerno boys, and I'm not sure how you could search for that. Maybe I'll put some of these links in the description box. There were three brothers. I think it was probably Spanish flu or one of the diseases of the time, and their pictures are on the statue, the ovals, and one of the boys is a statue of him sitting in a chair, and it's just, wow. I put a couple of other ones in here, of course. Nanny Tyler we just did recently, and I think what struck me on that was the sadness of her death, because we have pictures of her, and when I stare at that picture, it just tugs at your heart. I think the worst one that hurt the most was David Stuckel, also Joey Didier, those two, but David Stuckel, I really got mad on that one. I showed my emotion, and I think a lot of it had to do with not only the brutality of the murder and what they did to this poor boy, but that these two guys basically got off, and one of them is still alive today, sloughing around. Don't even get me started. But the only other one I can think of is A.J. Freund. I did that very early on, the little boy who was child abuse. You'll see the picture of his mother scowling on the thumbnail in her prison suit. A horrible story. And enough on that. So we've got a note from Tailgates and Toolboxes. If I wanted to visit a cemetery and film it, what is the proper etiquette? Do I need permission from the cemetery to film it? I would blur out the names. Well, it's good blurring out the names. When I was starting out early on, somebody left that in a comment, and I was like, that's a good comment. It was kind of a criticism, but I take, legitimate criticism I like. I don't like the disrespectful stuff. And I started doing it ever since then, or I try to do it. I probably miss a few. But as far as the cemetery, they're all pretty much private property. Most of them, I shouldn't say all. And then you have the archdiocese, and you do have to be a little careful. If you're in LA, a lot of the cemeteries, man, they swoop in on you. That's not a great place to, I was talking to one of the security people there, and he told me that they do it there. A lot of strange things happening in those cemeteries, and I'll leave it at that. That they just don't want anybody in a lot of those cemeteries except family, and they watch like hawks. But generally speaking, people leave you alone as long as you're respectful and you don't, point the camera at a service or disturb other people and don't talk too loud. But I would say this, my general philosophy is if you don't ask, they can't say no. But if you basically say you didn't know. But if you ask and they say no, then you can't go. So that's been my philosophy, and it's worked out pretty good. We've got Connie Black. What kind of profession did your parents do? My dad was a salesman, and my mom was a nurse in intensive care, worked the night shift. Cool Cat 7, I would like to know the story behind the logo. Angel of Death Victorious. Well, when I first started the channel, I thought that story, that's not just some creepy picture, it's kind of a creepy angel. It's mysterious to me. But the story behind it is what triggered me, is the Angel of Death Victorious. Death always wins, everybody dies. So that intrigued me, and I went with that. But the other part of it is, the title, Faces of the Forgotten, I came up with that right away because I wanted to always recognize those that are forgotten, not just the famous. I mix it up. but I always try to, we've done some with family members. We've done just some forgotten people. Forgotten stories intrigue me the most, so you'll always see some of that. Let's see here. So we had Connie Black, we had Cool Cat 7, and now Amy CS. Would you go on another expedition if you were invited? I guess you're talking about an Arctic expedition or some expedition? No, I do things solo. All my expeditions were solo because when I was in Alaska and when I first started, which what got me into seaplane flying, I got in trouble with somebody because I was with somebody and who's the leader, who's the captain of the ship, so to speak, and we kind of got led in a bad direction, and I'm like, I want to go this way. And they wanted to go that way, and we ended up getting in some trouble, putting that mildly. So I like to go solo. I don't like to be distracted, and I take all the safety precautions. I had a sat phone, I had an ELT, and I do things by myself like that. And I like doing this channel by myself. I enjoy it. I like to be around people. And I like to do the live streams, and I love all you guys. But when I'm doing a story, or I'm in a cemetery, I like to go by myself because I don't like to be distracted. I like to just focus on what I'm seeing and take it in. It's kind of sometimes a spiritual experience. Oh, what do we got here? Muddy Mummy 77. What was the most remembered grave that you have been to that sticks in your mind that you always think of? It would have to be Ella Barham, the one that we did in Harrison, Arkansas. And just the story, I felt like I connected with her. And I think part of it was meeting the author, Nita Gould, not in person, but exchanging a lot of thoughts and just connecting. But the cemetery, that's the cemetery that I walked through, that I had the strongest feeling that I was back in time. I was there. I could see it happening, it unfolding, the murder, which, it happened at that dark corner. And then they took her down across the creek, or he. And boy, it was eerie. You should check that episode out. Ella. Remembering Ella is the book. Robin Davis, how did you lose your child? Well, our daughter Milena, as I said, was killed in a head-on collision in Colorado, Redwood, near Redwood to Carbondale. They were heading south to see the Grand Canyon, her and her boyfriend, and they were coming around a curve at night, 2-lane highway, right in the divide. Well, the cliffs were coming down, the river on the left, and from the left side, a woman, I believe, I'm almost sure purposefully took the wheel and decided she wanted to kill herself and chose our daughter and her boyfriend to be the instrument of her death. And of course, she lived with just some injuries. Milena's boyfriend had major injuries, and he's got some crippling, his ankle, and he's got some for life things, although he was lucky too, but Milena was killed instantly, and thank heavens she was killed instantly. And that woman got a slap on the wrist. You know how I always talk about judges? Some people criticize me. It's not the judges, and yeah, it's not all the judges, but a lot of it is the judges and poor decision making, and really crying for the perpetrator, that they'll get rehabilitated and feeling sorry for them. And the defense attorneys do a great job. They paint that picture. So she got off, no jail time. I think she had a suspended license for a year, and that was about it. You can go Google it, Milena Kistner, Kistner, crash, Colorado. It'll come up. You can read all about that horrible woman. Leave it at that. I've got Rachel Hammer. Do you believe that we live after we pass? I absolutely do. I'm more of a reincarnation type of belief, and I don't know for sure. You grow up and you go you think about different things. I do believe that we all have a life energy, and that's science, that's fact. Electromagnetic energy is what runs our body, and when it shuts down, it doesn't disappear. It has to go somewhere. Does it dissipate, or does it stay together? Does it reincarnate in a new baby or someone else or something else? I don't know. But it seems to me that our life force energy, since it cannot be destroyed, so to speak, our bodies are, they're vessels. Although we'll talk about that. I always wonder, does our soul, your life energy, I believe, is our soul, which really emanates, it's really in your brain. That's where all the energy is. So that's what I believe. And I know a lot of you believe in heaven, and I think it's great. So, one thing I'll mention is everybody, let's just respect everybody's views, and I don't really want to see any comments preaching chapters of the Bible and stuff. I mean, we respect that. I respect that. It's not my belief, and I'll respect you. Respect me, please. But you're not going to convert me. Okay, enough on that subject. Let's move on. We've got Connor James. Is there one grave that really spoke to you? Well, literally, the crypt of Richard Warren Sears, when I was in there, if you guys have watched that, or any of you, towards the end of a video, it's like some bonus footage. I think it was the Jonathan. No, it was the Longrove video. I think it's the bald guy with the screaming face. You can't miss that thumbnail. And at the end of that episode, I went to, it was at Rose Hill, in the Rose Hill Mausoleum, and I was in the Richard Warren Sears crypt, and the temperature went from like 60 degrees to 100 degrees or more in seconds, and I kid you not. And I felt a really bad presence. I had to get out of there. I definitely believe he was not a happy guy in life, and he definitely is not a happy guy now. And the legend is Montgomery Ward crypt is down the hallway, and they're supposed to come out at night and they feud. Anyway, I'll leave you to decide what you think about that. So, let's see. What is the Nancy McGee? What is the oldest grave you've seen? Has to be Vermont, and I think it was, as I recall, the episode on the vampires. So just go search on those vampirism, the vampire scare that they had. Black 233, Black 2333. What was your profession before this channel? Are you a veteran? I am not a veteran. I wear camo a lot because that's what I always wore on my expeditions. That's what I'm comfortable with, hiking, adventures. It's just like what I'm comfortable wearing. So no, I'm not trying to pretend to be a veteran. I'm not a veteran. I love and I respect veterans, as you guys know. And my profession before is an architect. I'm still a registered architect, although I'm pretty much retired now. I advise my companies. I started my company when I was 33 in a 3-flat apartment with no money, with credit cards that had some balance. So I basically had a month or two to get it going or fail. And my attitude was exceed expectations, and it took off. And with the help from a lot of great people, we built it into one of the top, if not the top, interior corporate design firm of Chicago, which it is today. And we diversified into other companies like product advertising, consumer advertising. So I have an ad firm, which I'm very excited about. It really allows a lot of my creative is not just architecture, and I was more the businessman instead of the design creative, but I think I'm creative also. I'm more of an inventor. But it's more of a businessman. I really enjoy the creative side of advertising and how, from animation, I'm an artist. I do watercolor since college, renderings of homes I did professionally for a while to moonlight and earn side money. So I've always been a painter, a cartoonist, always draw pictures. That's why I got bad grades in grade school. because I was drawing cartoons of the other kids and distracting the teacher, not paying attention, getting bad grades, and that's what led me to the principal's office, who took a special opportunity to pound on me. Well, that's another that's another episode. So that's my profession. And let's see what else. We have a virtual reality rendering company. We have a environmental branding company. So I've diversified into other companies, but right now I'm majority owner and selling stock to the successors, and they're really talented people and doing a better job than me taking those companies over. So I'm really proud to see all of the growth. The company's name, by the way, is Partners by Design in Chicago, and then the ad firm is Spark, and then the advertising firm is called Gravity Labs. Okay, what was your profession? We got that. Mary Mims, when will you be going across the seas to visit graveyards there? Well, I plan to go. I wanted to go this last summer, but didn't work out because, this pandemic stuff like resurfaced. So maybe next year I want to do UK, I want to do Scotland, England. Got a lot of stories there I want to do. Ireland if possible. I know Serenity Sue. Irish Eyes, hopefully I can come see you guys. Yeah, but I've got some, and it's not Highgate. I mean, I'll stop at Highgate probably, but there's a lot of people walking through there, and it's been done over and over on YouTube. What can I add? I know you say I'm a storyteller, but it doesn't intrigue me. I like to do stuff. I like to find new stuff people haven't done. I try, not all the time. Unless the story really, it's like, intrigues me and I'm fixated on it, or some hero, then I'll still do it on top of anybody else or under anybody else that has done it already. But yeah, I've got some stories in UK that this stuff you guys probably nobody's thought of, and that's the kind of stuff I like. But it's interesting, there was another question while we're on it, and just in case we run out of time, on how do I decide what to do? And that's a great question. It really comes down to what intrigues me. I get lots and lots of suggestions, and all of them are great. But unless it catches the fire and just I see it and then I get obsessed with it, I'll keep it on file, I'll keep it on mind, but it's all what rises to the top, and it's bubbling constantly. And that's what I do. Okay, what do we got here? Speaking of that, how many miles, Lori Smith, how many miles do you drive on average each month in order to visit different cemeteries? Well, a lot of the stuff I do in Illinois, Wisconsin, in that region, and I would probably average 10 to 20 miles a day when I do a story, and I try to do one every day or every other day. My routine is to get up, check comments, have breakfast, do research, go out, do a story, come back, and editing at night, and then the next day do it all over again. And I always think the next day, I don't want to do it. And I get up the next day, I'm like, I got to get out of here. Cabin fever, I want to do that next story. So it's like a cycle, but when I'm on the road like this, I drive thousands of miles, and it's fun. I don't drive them all at once. I'll drive 200 or 300 miles a day. Some days I'll drive 100 miles, but every day or every other day, I stay at a hotel. I got my routine, and I basically get up in the morning, have breakfast, hit the road, arrive midday, shoot the episode, edit in the evening, do it all over again the next day. Let's see, Lori Smith, we talked about. Mary Mims, we answered her question. Tyvania Black, have you ever had experience with the paranormal? No, I've not had any paranormal experiences at the cemeteries, but when I was in high school, I did have an out-of-body experience, and I literally was, and I believe in the potential of channeling an out-of-body experience, and that's when I got into Casey and looking at all his, and Shirley MacLaine and all of that stuff. That sent me down a deep, long path of interest. So I'm intrigued with all that stuff even to this day. Auras, especially while we're on the subject, auras I don't know if you guys know about auras, but it's the energy field, your electromagnetic energy that comes out. And there's a lot of fakes out there, by the way. But many years ago, there was an aura image that I saw of a woman that I knew. Sherry Pope was her name. Gosh, this goes back to when I was in my late 20s. And she showed me a picture of an aura, and it was unbelievable. And basically, you don't realize it, but, deny it or not, scientifically, our energies are putting out energy all the time. And when you approach a person, their energy field is crossing over with your energy field. We're not aware of it. You can't see it, but it is scientifically there. And that's maybe why you can sense, you get a bad sense of a person, or you really like that person, felt like you've known them. So aura is I went out to California actually not too long ago, and I had a woman do an aura. I was like, I got to do this. And she had this thing you put your hand on, and it was all BS in my opinion. I mean, you've got to get a camera on you. You don't put your palm on something, and then it's all like pre-printed stories. So be really careful if you get into that kind of stuff. Wow, I was just going down the rabbit hole there, wasn't I? How are we ever going to finish this? All right, I'm going to try and speed it up a little bit. All right, Lori Smith, we talked. Brian Burlinson. Ron, seen so much cruelty and evil in the world. Does it not have a depressing effect on you? Yes, and as I mentioned before, I can only do so many murder stories, and I have to spread them out. There was one you saw in that live at Graceland where I just couldn't do the story, and I just pivoted to go to Graceland. I'm like, I just can't do this story. And I thought I'd do it later, and just to this day, I'm just not going to do the story. And there's just some stories I'm just not going to do. I don't care about views. I don't care about getting views. That's not why I'm here. And by the way, on that, I'm really happy with the community. That's what drives me. And seeing the numbers go up and 170,000 subscribers, it is inspiring. And now, I'm goal-oriented, and I want to see that go up. But it's the views aren't, trying to get a lot of views and all that's not a driver. Okay, Patricia Selby, boy, I got to speed it up here. Have you ever thought about getting a sidekick or helper? No, I like to do it solo, but thank you. Walter Burton, wondering what becomes of coins on headstones when there isn't any more room. Well, they probably fall off on the ground. And what the question is interesting though, because it made me wonder, where do the coins go? Because they can't, somebody's got to be taking those coins after decades and decades. Otherwise, there should be a sack of coins there, right? Like a whole coffee can of coins. So I don't know. Let's think about that. Somebody's taking those coins. Maybe people that really need it. Probably, right? Because we're not taking those coins. We don't need those coins. So maybe that's a good way to think of it. People that are in need. Because I'm sure they come through the cemetery. And well, we know they do. Okay. Walter Burton, Kenny Sherrill, have you thought about an expedition to find your missing Avenger? Oh boy, long story, and I'm going to try to keep this short. 3 or 4 years ago, it was May 4th, May 5th, can't remember the date. I had bought in addition to the seaplane, I bought an airplane called the TBM Avenger. It was a 1945 vintage World War II aircraft carrier airplane, a torpedo bomber, huge plane. It was the largest aircraft carrier plane in World War II, crew of 3. It was a lot to handle, and it was cool, and went through the whole thing, and it was put on a big ship along with other cargo and brought from Australia to Long Beach, California, and the whole idea was to fly it back, and I got my buddy Kenny, and we were flying it back to Chicago, and we landed in Phoenix area. Actually, it was south, Maricopa, at that airport, something, AK Chin, I think it was called. Anyway, we took off from there, and we were crossing the White Mountains heading for New Mexico. And at the worst possible place by Mount Baldy, not Mount Baldy, California, it's Mount Baldy in the White Mountains. by Apache Junction and I think it's White River. Anyway, that whole engine blew up and the plane started going down. I had to get him out. We had parachutes. I had the best parachutes, the best helmets, got him out. And then just before it crashed, I bailed. It was on fire, smoke. So you can Google that. It's been on NBC. It's been on CBS. And I've got a blog on it. I'll put the link in that tells like my account. That's going to be in the book, by the way, the whole story in more detail. That's going to be coming. The book will probably come out. Walt Meyer's book on my story will probably come out in about a year. I got the final draft, but when I get home after this trip, I got to dig back into it. So, to answer your question, expedition to find it. Yeah, we spent over a year trying to look for it, but we got a lot of resistance from the Apache peoples, and understandably, that's their sacred land. And I was trying to get attention, and they didn't want the attention. They don't want people snooping around on their sacred land. So we came to an agreement, and we're going to just kind of leave it alone. A lot of overflights looking for it still, but the airplane is still missing. So I have right now, I have the memory of that airplane, but it's still missing, and we'll always be looking for it. Hopefully in my lifetime it gets found. It's a ghost ship. It is a ghost ship. It has the turret in the back with the machine gun. It was a flying museum. Okay, this is Christina Pruitt wants to know, does your wife or boys ever come with you to the cemeteries? No, they don't my wife doesn't like the cemetery, and I think it reminds her of Milena, our daughter, and I don't think she's really ever liked cemeteries anyway. And we're a different breed, us. If you look around, I think the majority of the people are creeped out by cemeteries still. We're in our own bubble, we think it's cool. But most people that I encounter, friends, they like my history stories, but they're like, it's a little strange there, going to the cemetery. So, hey, cool. But no, I'm kind of on my own. The boys support the channel. They're more interested, though, like, 173,000 subscribers, Dad, you are a god. And I'm like, cool. My sons, I'm not a dork anymore. Something that they can relate to. Carla J, any contact from family or from people that were upset with you? Maybe someone that is upset you are getting too close to finding a solution to a murder, or someone that didn't like that you featured their loved one. I have to say, no, it's been quite well. There's one exception, but a minor exception, but it has been hands down. And by the way, I don't call the families ahead of time. I don't bother them. I don't want to bring up. I just go when I'm doing a story, and you don't need permission. And it's not even about getting permission from the family. I mean, you want to be respectful. But it's like this. I feel like that like anyone, it's like a news channel. You're going out to report a story. You don't ask permission. You don't need to ask permission. Just be respectful and do the story. But what has happened is many families or mothers or people family members have got in touch with me, some through comments even, mostly email, that have thanked me for doing the story, for remembering. A lot of them were children, the children's stories, so we'll leave it at that. So no, it's been quite the opposite. Virginia Thompson, do viewers alert you to interesting graves? Absolutely. I probably get half or more than half of my stories now from you guys, and it's very, very important. That's why going through all the emails is labor. It is hard. Emails remind me of work, all the emails we all get, but it's my gold mine. I mean, you guys, I really spend the time. I read every single email and I respond to. If you don't get a response, you mail me back, because I respond to everyone. And sometimes it might be thank you, or I'll keep this in mind, but I read them all. So yeah, you guys are really, really key. Let's see here. James McDonald. I love Civil War history. What are some of your memorable ones? Well, I'm not a Civil War expert. I am not a World War I expert. I know a little bit a little bit enough, I guess, to be dangerous, but not too dangerous. Now, World War II, I've been fanatical on, and I like to tell World War II stories the most, but we're going to do it all. And the World War II, and then also Western Frontier. I love Western Frontier stories. Those really intrigue me. But Stones River, I think, is the most memorable one, which I just did. When I stood in that cemetery, it was boy, it came alive. That's all I can say. I could feel those men. I could feel the spirits of those men there. Connie Black, have you ever had any trouble from sketchy people in some of the older cemeteries? Well, Connie, let me tell you 3 stories. As you all know, I am armed. I have a concealed carry. I check the states that I'm in, and I carry where legal here. Most of these states I'm in, starting with Texas. So reciprocation from Illinois, but yeah, I have had issues, and I've had to pull my gun twice. I have a 40 caliber Glock with I'll just say the right ammunition to knock somebody down. And I also carry not just pepper spray. Since my Arctic expeditions and my travels to Alaska, I have UDAP, UDAP, which is for grizzly bears. It's a bear spray. Keep that in there. I don't want to ever use the gun, but if it's Fast and Furious coming up fast, I'll pull out the gun. And to tell you, my first bad experience was in Chicago doing Colosimo, Jim Colosimo and Jesse Owens and some others, and it was at Oakwood. I think it's called Oakwood on the south side. And some young guys were, I don't like to disclose, and I don't disclose what equipment I use, but you all notice that I have cinematic, pretty high-res images. So I don't carry around a cell phone. I have a pretty big equipment setup, gimbal and cinematic camera that weighs a lot. And it's, people see it and they go, man, what are you carrying? Is that a AR-15? one person in the hotel. But anyway, not to get distracted, what happened was a group of young men came up and they were curious and hey this, hey that, and then I think they saw that camera and they're like, we're gonna take that camera. And I'm like, no, you're not. And then when they started flanking me, don't ever let somebody get behind you. So when they started doing that, I started walking backwards, and then I set the camera down in a motion like, okay, you can have it. And I could tell they were like, and then there was a guy who started to come around me from the back, and I think he was going to take me out. So I drew my gun, and I'm trained to lift my shirt, and in a flash, I've got that gun out. My draw is about 0.8 seconds, less than a second, and I can be firing. So finger off the trigger, brought the gun down on him. He flew away, and I just told them all, I said, don't do anything stupid. Don't do anything stupid. And they're like, oh, you're overreacting about it. Yeah, right. So I got out of that one, and the other time I had to pull my gun, but I didn't have to aim it, was in Jackson. Is that Jackson, Tennessee? Yeah, Casey Jones. Now, if you watch the Casey Jones episode, watch the part at the beginning where I'm at the Waffle House parking lot. Why am I there? Because that's where the locomotive museum is, and there's the locomotive, and I'm filming it. And you will see, I edited most of it up. I couldn't edit all, just as I'm finishing up, and I've got the camera like this. All right, so we're going to the cemetery now. You can see guys, there were 2 guys approaching in the background, and they were coming. And on that one, I had to do the don't do anything stupid. And again, same reaction. Oh, we were just wanted to meet you. Yeah, right. But in the other one was very scary in Memphis, South Memphis, the Memphis Belle story. I forget what the cemetery is called, but sometimes I like to do the drive-in with the phone, right? We're in as I drive. So I'll clean the windshield off. I don't like bugs on the windshield for you guys. So I went to this body shop across the street from the cemetery. No one was there. I'm in the parking lot by myself and I'm cleaning the windshield. But then I see this, I'll never forget, it was a white van. It comes rolling in. I see these guys, they're like this. And they came rolling in fast. And luckily I had always have your eyes up. That's your best weapon, is defense, is watching. Don't get caught in the phone. Don't be caught what you're doing. Don't be embarrassed. The gas stations are the worst transitional spaces. Keep a heads up. Always be looking around. And these guys came rolling up and the van back door started opening. And I was already 1 foot in the front seat and my car was running and I was out of there. They didn't follow me, but I watched as I went over the hill. They were just kind of rolling out of there and they were waiting to see if I was going to come back. And I remember going over the hill. So anyway, yeah, no bad experiences on my Texas, Arkansas trip. No bad experiences here on this trip. What do we got? Connie Black, Kent Nelson, what got you into flying? We talked about that. What airplanes do I fly? I owned the de Havilland Beaver, amphib, yellow and blue, beautiful airplane. And then I sold that. I had the TBM Avenger, but the big plane I have now, and I'm just selling it now because I'm just not, I kind of lost you can't do both. And this is my passion now. So it was the Cessna Caravan. It's an 11 passenger turboprop commercial airplane. So that has just been sold. We're closing this week on it, I think. So no more flying. Jennifer Campbell, how do you choose the graves that you visit? Books that I read, history, knowledge, research, exploring cemeteries, walking, and then suggestions. But again, I only pick what intrigues me. That really intrigues me. And it's like something, it's like a switch. I know immediately as I'm looking through, I'm like, no. Boom. I like that. I'm doing that. And it turns out that I think a lot of you guys like the stuff I'm picking. I cannot do every cemetery. I can't flood this channel with just everything. So I'm very careful about the stories that I pick. I try to keep it not a high level, but my high level, and it just turns out that a lot of you guys like the stuff I'm intrigued with. So I'm going to stay with that program. Okay, we're going to end this as a part 1. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it in the same video. I'm going to do a few more questions, then we're going to get to top comments. Jennifer Campbell, Brenda Krieger, would you build your own mausoleum if you could afford it? I used to always think I'd be in a mausoleum, and after doing and seeing the stuff we've all been seeing, the desecration and skulls being taken and bones thrown on the floor. Oh, that one that I did in Valmeyer, Illinois, that whole family. I will not be in a mausoleum. Even the cryogenics thing I'm not going to do, I don't think. I was thinking of that. What about that? Because I don't want to be buried in the ground. Well, now I want to be buried in the ground, and maybe I think I'm going to have the natural burial because I just want to disintegrate and become part of the earth because it's just a vessel. I do not want my body used as a ping pong ball, my skull, or some other sport for vandals and ghouls down the road. And I believe that a lot of these mausoleums that are beautiful today, 500 years from now, who knows what's going to happen. So dust to dust for me. But I don't want to do cremation. It scares me. Because what if the soul doesn't leave the body right away? You don't know that. I saw Night Gallery many years ago. Never forgot it, where they had him on the autopsy table. I've talked about this on Alive, and they were cutting his skull open, with the saw, and he's like, that hurts. Because the soul didn't leave the body right away. It took a few days. So I'm always like, man, I don't want to be put in that oven. What if your soul, that energy, there's just some of that energy left, still hasn't left. Anyway, going in an oven scares I'll just get natural burial. That would be great. Or in the desert, let the birds pick me away. That would be my best, is just lay me out in the desert. But I think that's illegal. Even if you own your own land, I don't think you can do that. We'll see. Laura Swan, what, in your opinion, is the saddest Faces of the Forgotten story you've ever heard? No doubt it has to be Little Feller. Little Feller was the Novotny boy, Willem Novotny. the Czech boy who passed away in the Eastland disaster. He was one of the last survivors, or he may have been the last survivor found when that ship rolled over in the Chicago River, killed, 700 or 800 people. And it tugged at me so much, we got him a stone, and we got the porcelain picture. Sad to report that it's done, it's in. They won't let me see it at Bohemian National Cemetery, and that's fine, but they put the foundation in the wrong spot. And I was hoping we could get it before November, December to close the year out and show you, because I'm dying to see it and I'm dying to show you. And it didn't happen, so ground's frozen. Probably won't happen until spring, but we will see it. But little feller, yeah. Darlene Warden, do you believe in the afterlife or ghosts? Yeah, I talked about that. I do believe in the spirit world. I don't. Unfortunately, there's a lot of charlatans and fakers even today, but there's definitely things that are happening that our body, our senses can't pick up on. Tim Manfredi, maybe I copied that down. Tim Manfredi. What is the furthest distance you've traveled to do an episode? That would be Vermont on one side and LA on the other. Haven't been overseas, haven't done Canada yet, the pandemic. Haven't left the country. But those I do flights and I rent a car. But when I'm doing this stuff south, southwest, I'm in my truck. I mean, I'm on the move constantly. Jill Gross, I'd like to know how you pick your destinations and which cemeteries you visit. Do you have a criteria? I did talk to you. I did mention that I do only what intrigues me, and it has to really intrigue me. And then in some cases, like when I drove to Minnesota to do the 20 grave of the little girl buried alive, it was like an obsession, and I drove 8 hours to do it. I drove 8 hours back. Didn't even stay at a hotel, but yeah, that's what I do. Okay. Oh, by the way, like when I do this, I do plan out my route. I have a map. And what I do is I take a map of that region of the country and I Photoshop in little pictures of my stories, like the faces of the people. And then you can look over the cities where they're at. So graphically, you can kind of see, and then you can go on, MapQuest, and it works out pretty good. If anybody's doing that, any of my YouTube friends, you're going to do some travels, try that. Make a picture and with little pictures of your destination. It's a great way to plan a trip, let me tell you. Because you don't want to just dart. You want to go in a string. Like, who's up next? Jill Gross. Okay, we talked. Murat Beckler. Hi from Sydney, Australia. Just curious why you haven't gone to Boston, because there are graves that date back to the 16th century. Well, I would love to go to Boston, but I've only been doing this a year and a half. Some people, some of you think I've been doing this for 5 years, like some of the other big channels. The big channels. I just started this like a year and a half ago, so I will get to Boston. I think in a year and a half I've covered a lot of territory, but yeah, definitely Boston, Philly, New York. I haven't hit that whole region yet, so definitely Massachusetts too, and all of that, Rhode Island. Okay, Jill Gross, Murat, Ruth Lee, which one of your videos has been the most upsetting? I mentioned David Stuckel, the men released. Greg Flatten, not any bad wishes, just wondering if any plans to keep the channel going if something should happen to you. Do you like the way the channel is operating? I do like the way the channel is operating. And if something happens to me, the channel's just gonna stop. I don't know how it's gonna keep going, because my kids aren't gonna do it, and my wife's not gonna do it. So it's just gonna be a bookend, and there'll be a lot of content to look at. Last question for this part of the episode. Elizabeth K. Hi, Ron. I don't know if anyone has asked this already, but I would like to know more about your flying. How long did it take to learn? Any close calls with wildlife? We talked about a polar bear. So just to cap out, yeah, it took me 2 months to get my private pilot's license, and it took me about 2 months a year later, maybe 3 months, to get my instruments and seaplane rating. And that's in a very short time, because when I do something, I'm like a dog with a bone. I was doing it every day or every other day, flying and getting the lessons. And I flew, what was the other part of the question? Any close calls? We talked about that. I did have, the two biggest close calls I had were with polar bears in 2000, or was it 2001? I had flown my seaplane out on the ice pack. That's when I had the Cessna 206, Turbo 206, red and white, and I was out of Churchill, and I flew. It was July, and the ice pack was still frozen 10 miles out, but from 10 miles out to shore, there were ice floes and a lot of open water. Perfect way to see a polar bear and get a picture. So I had parked my plane, landed among the moving ice floes. I would never do this today. When you're in your 40s, I guess I had more kahunas, and I parked the plane and anchored it off the ice floe, to make a long story short. And this is all in a video on Bush Pilot Explorer channel if you want to hear the story and see the pictures and video. But the bottom line is, I got on the ice, I had my gun camera looking for this massive polar bear that I'd spotted, and he disappeared. Well, he was in the water coming. So luckily I just got the heck out of there. All these seals, were they ringneck seals? I forget what they're called. They were jumping around, and I took off, came around, and there's the polar bear. And then the other one was not a good experience. I had an engine out, and I had to glide it, no engine, into a pond, pulled the yoke back into the tundra, bouncing, almost flipped the plane over. And I was 90 miles south of Churchill. Again, the engine stopped. I got it down without a scratch on the plane, but I was stuck. But I had a massive polar bear come within about 2 hours. I had the sat phone. I called search and rescue. I got everything on top of the airplane. You don't want to be in the cabin. But again, helicopter rescue came in time. You can see it all there. So this is going to wrap up the first part. And I'm not sure if I'll put this all in the same episode, but maybe I'll put it as a part 2 on top comments. All right? Catch you in a few. Okay, gang, let's continue this Q&A with top comments. All right, we've got Jenny Scott. If there were no obstacles or limitations, is there one grave you would visit that you have not or could not have seen yet? There is one. There is one. And it's not in another country. It is a man who is actually buried at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. And I'm not sure how I'm going to explain this, but I am going to do this one, and it's not a cenotaph. It's going to be a story. It's World War II related, and that is my number one right now. And all I can say, it's going to be an epic episode. Crazy, something you never would have imagined that you will be able to see, and we're gonna go there. So just trust me on this one. It's going to be pretty crazy and really interesting. Okay, so we've got Dandelion. Have you ever told a story that literally makes you cry? Well, there were a couple, actually, recently. I don't ever get emotional, I don't think, but Chris Kyle, you saw at the end of that, and it wasn't as much. Chris Kyle, it was an emotional story, but really what got me choked up on that story was our countrymen waving, and women waving the flags. When I think about our country and a love of country, that's what got me choked up on that one. And I literally had a pause. The other one was one that I did about a week and a half ago. I won't say where it is, somewhere here in the southeast, and it's a child, but I didn't lose it. But I got kind of choked up, but I think I hit it pretty well. But those are the two that I would describe. Melissa K-H-A-L-A-R, Kalar. Have you a preference as to how your remains will be taken care of? Yes, I think I mentioned before I'm going to do the natural burial. Brandy DeVoe. Do you have a certain criteria for choosing the stories? I'm a recent subscriber. Channel, every story you've told us has been absolutely amazing. Thank you, Brandy. Well, that just goes to show, I was talking before about how I pick the stories. Basically, they just have to intrigue the heck out of me. They got to really catch my interest and make me excited. And it turns out that the stuff I like is the stuff you like. So we're gonna stay with that. Gray Muzzle Mama, are you married? If so, what does she think of your adventures? Does she join you? Yes, I'm married. I mentioned that. But we didn't talk about is what does she think of my adventures? Well, she's very supportive. Our relationship's is good because we both respect. I'm kind of like, I'll say, like the lone eagle. I need to go off. I need to soar. I need to fly. I can't be fenced in, so to speak. And I'm not talking about marriage or commitments. I'm talking about just, my adventures. No matter who, where, I have been married before. It's always been, I've got to do my solo adventures. So going to the Southeast, going to the Texas, Arkansas, that whole mission, these are my little missions. I might do 2 or 3 a year, and that's it. Most of the rest of the time I'm at home. So it's good. 1973 Warm Machine. I love that name. 1973 Warm Machine. What does that mean? Anyway, what made you interested in doing your journey to find out more about Sir John Franklin's expedition and crew and the lost ships? Well, I picked up a book. I do a lot of reading, and I've done a lot of reading, and I get a lot of my stories from books that I've read that I've got in my head. But back in my 30s, I started reading stories of Arctic expeditions, Shackleton and the such. And then I got onto the story of the Franklin expedition, and what I discovered was they haven't found the ships, and they haven't found the men, and they haven't found the admiral, and they haven't found the ship's logs. They haven't found hardly anything. They found some of the crew laying frozen out on the land. Well, the story of the Franklin expedition, you can Google it, Wikipedia, is these men set out in the mid-1800s on 2 famous ships, the Terror and the Erebus, and they went into the Arctic trying to find the Northwest Passage, and it's a 3-year voyage, but they all disappeared up there, and it was the biggest mystery for many years until someone further explored. Sent some 40-some ships from all sorts of countries, England mainly in the US, trying to find them, and some of those people got killed and ships wrecked. So Franklin expedition is a big-time famous thing, and if you haven't heard about it, then you're probably, people in Canada, people in England, you guys all know Franklin. So I became fascinated with it, and I said, I have a method. I have the seaplane. I can get up there, because it's only open, the ice only for a month or 2 a year, and who's going to take a ship up there? I don't own an icebreaker like the Canadian government, but I figured out a way to do it logistically, and I spent 15 years doing it. And that's how I got interested in it. And again, in 2011, I've got a picture of Erebus in shallow water. That was the method that I went to. I photographed, not video. I had a special camera built in the airplane in the bottom hatch of the de Havilland Beaver. And there's a blog. You can look at all this stuff. If you go online, go to In Search of Franklin, Ron Carlson, but if you put In Search of Franklin, you can read the whole blog in order, the history of how I started the expeditions and where I went and what I found. But that's all going to be in the book. But that's the story of that. Let's see. Would you consider traveling to the UK, Highgate? Yeah, this is Kay Evans. And would give you days of content, let alone the abbeys and the cathedrals, with our royalty and history? Absolutely. And like I say, Highgate is going to be a stop, but it's not something, it's been done over and over and over and that kind of stuff. I'm more interested in doing my own stories and finding and searching adventures. The abbeys, the royalty, I love it. One of my favorite stories is Lord Nelson. I've read all the books, that history. I've been to the museum. I saw his bloody socks. What a story. So we'll be doing Lord Nelson. And I've got some other stories that no one has thought of that super intrigue me. And boy, I want to tell you, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. But yeah, we'll get there. Vanessa Kittredge, do you edit your own videos? Yes, I'm a one-man show, except for, thank God, we have moderators, Kimberly and Debbie, Ashley, and now Sharon have joined us, and thank God for them. They watch our back, but otherwise everything, I produce everything, I film everything, I research everything. I don't have a researcher. Every single thing I do on my own, including the editing. Editing is my favorite part. It's funny, when I do editing, first of all, it allows my creative side. You've seen some of the special effects I love doing, only where appropriate. I don't like to go over the top with stuff. I like to keep it real. But I love the editing, because when I'm doing the editing, I'm kind of reliving where I was, and I get to see I'm thinking about the story so much that my eyes aren't absorbing what this unbelievable cinematic camera is, which I can't share, sorry. It's my secret sauce. Okay, Stephan E, 1972. Why are you so respectful, compassionate toward most of the dearly departed? I wonder if there's something in your personal history that drives you to do this. Did you experience a personal tragedy that motivates you? Actually not. I mean, I've had the personal tragedies, some, and the biggest one, of course, is losing our daughter, but it's no connection to motivating me or connecting to the stories that I tell or driving me. That's a totally separate passion. And why am I so compassionate? I don't know. There's no answer for that. It's just in the composite of who I am. When I go, I'm a respectful person, and I'm respectful. So I don't have a good answer for that one, sorry. Just the way I'm wired, I guess. Peg S, when you decide you are going to cemeteries, say like the southern ones you're doing now, do you sit down and make the map of the cemeteries that have history and follow that? Or do you get off track sometimes because you hear of another one? Well, it's a great question, and I answered a lot of that in the earlier part, where I make the map and all the pictures, so I'm not zigzagging around, I'm kind of going in a flow. But yes, a great example of me going off track is when I was in Vermont, and it was the day before I was leaving, and I had everything figured out. And a lot, to do like a trip like this, I do all the research on the stories ahead of time, so when I go, I've got to refresh the story, and then I can just tell the story. And I don't like narrating. I don't like, I like to just tell the story and have it here. So, but there was, it's a good example. This happens sometimes. Tommy the cat, one of our viewers in Vermont, sent me the story of the vampire scare, and what was the name of the town? It's the same town that they have Woodstock. I was going to say where they had the concert in New York. So it's Woodstock, Vermont, and the vampire story. I'm like, oh, I just started reading a little bit about what's online. I'm like, oh, I can't leave without doing this story. And I have to go there. I've got to see the grave where they dug the boy up and they took his heart and they put it in the forge. And it's like, I got to go do that story. And everyone else is doing the story of the witch or the other and I'm like, I'm doing, I love this because no one's doing this. I'm going to do it. So that's, I don't like doing stuff that I'm really careful about that, especially even our friend channels. And it was funny, I was talking to Rhett and he's like, no, Oklahoma, he's such a great guy, by the way. Rhett, ready for history. And he's like, no, don't worry about me. You just do the story you want, even if I've done it already or if I'm going to do it. You go do it. So what a class guy. But I'm really sensitive to that, and I don't want to step on anyone else's video that's done it. So if someone else has done it, I don't want to do it. What can I add if they've done a good job? That's kind of the way I view it. So it's a little bit background on that. Linda H. Have any roaming spirits ever hitched a ride on you? No. And I've always come in a good way, I call it. Working with the native peoples, the First Nation, we've always talked about it when I go to the Arctic, and it's a whole nother story. I work with the Lakota, especially the great-grandson of Jasper Bigfoot, who, if you know a little history on Wounded Knee, the massacre that was with him before he passed away at Rosebud and at the tomb, and he always said, when you go to the north, bring them this pipe. And it's a whole nother story of the pipe that we had made of the polar bear, the Chinoopa. And he said, you go in a good way. You go in a good way, and you will be safe. So that's the only advice when you go to the cemetery with good intentions. They know. And by the way, when I've gone in there sometimes, I cannot find a grave. And don't laugh. You'll probably laugh at me. But there are times, 2 or 3 times, where I've yelled out to everybody, said, hey, I'm looking for, Joe Blow, not Joe Blow, but I said, hey, I need a little help here. Come on. And I'll talk to one of the, I'll see Rosemary or whatever, or John, and I'll say, hey, John, where's, and I'll look down and there they are. I mean, it's unbelievable. Now, not every time, but it's happened a few times, and along with those wind chimes going by, that Richard Speck with one of the nurses, I think it was in Wheaton, the Wheaton Cemetery, and I was going to her grave, and I said something, and all of a sudden there was no wind, hardly. There was a little wind, but all of a sudden these chimes above my head went, and the whole chimes thing, I'll tell you some stories about that. Joe M., you're very skilled at storytelling. Did you do a lot of public speaking? Funny you ask that. No, I was always been scared to death to do public speaking. Not a great speaker in public. And when you look back at my life, I hated public speaking. I had to do it once in college, and I froze. And I never really enjoyed it much. Running the companies, being the CEO, it's one of those things where you just, I got to do this speech, I got to do a toast, and if you're nervous and you don't want to screw up. But the one thing about me is I have to do things unscripted. I cannot read, and it's got to, it comes from the heart, and you just go with it. So that is the way I do it, and it just has come out okay. But I don't enjoy doing it, and it's funny when we do the live streams. If I start thinking about there's 1,000 people here, then I start going, oh my God, like I'm talking to a phone. It's not so scary. Like I have spoke in front of some big audiences, not a lot, and it is frightening. It is frightening. Start sweating, and so I love this YouTube the way, I can just look at my phone and I don't pay attention to how many people don't put a piece of tape over that part of the phone. Adwina Harford from Dublin, Ireland. What does your family think of what you do in traveling so far? I think we've talked about that. They're very, very supportive, and they know that I need to have my own, getaway time of adventure. Kelly Conrad, I was curious about your background, your field of work, family. Talked about that. Architect. I'm a registered architect, but I would say I'm more defined as an entrepreneur, starting companies. And Kristen WK, what is the strangest thing that happened while you were visiting a cemetery? Well, I have to tell you, there's a episode that I did on the murder of Jacqueline de Wallaby, and it goes back near the beginning. And when I was at her gravestone, I didn't see it, but maybe it was a trick of the light beams and the phone or whatever. No, it wasn't the phone. That's the thing. See, when you use the cell phone, there's a lot of rainbows and all kinds of stuff going. And it's like, you start to think, well, it happens so much with the cell phone that, it's the method of photography, the technology, and the light beams and the photons and all that. But I had my cinematic, and I had a pretty significant rainbow come up at her grave. And this was after the death of our daughter, and I felt a connection. See, the rainbow for our family is very, very special. It's the rainbow signifies Milena, her daughter, who was killed, and everything about her is the rainbow. In life, she loved rainbows, and we see, whenever we see a rainbow, we think of Melly. So anyway, I'm going to move on because I'm going to start getting choked up. Okay, Betty. Oh yeah, I talked about the winds, the mothers. I was talking about the chimes calling. There was another occasion, the Jamie Kloss episode in Wisconsin, where I was going to the parents' grave who were murdered. Of course, Jamie Kloss was held hostage, still alive. She got away, but he murdered both parents. And there was wind, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, these chimes were going nuts. And I was like, they're calling me. And I went over there, and different last name, and I didn't put it together until later, but I looked at the picture and I talked about the woman, her name. Turns out that was her mother, the woman who was killed. So that is crazy. And the funny one I like that was weird is at the Forest Home Cemetery. If you watch the Adolf Lutgert sausage vat murder episode that I did at Forest Home Cemetery when I was driving in, we see, I called her Resurrection Mary, but it was freaky. This woman that looked in a black cloak, and she came flashing across in front of me, and I was like, holy cow, I just said it's Resurrection Mary, so go check that out at the beginning. She comes flying past pretty quick. But Betty Feliciano, one of our favorite and longtime viewers and subscribers, what made you decide to stop flying? Well, I mentioned this. By the way, flying the plane that I had last, and I'm just selling it now, the Caravan, is a full-time job. It has a jet engine, a turboprop engine, 11-passenger commercial airplane, and you don't just get in it and go flying. You have to personally maintain it and do pre-checks, post-checks. You have to all the weather checking, all the flight briefings, from weather to flight planning, and then the biggest thing is cleaning that thing up after every trip and horsing it around. It's a massive airplane, so it's a full-time job, and I loved it. It was my passion. But when I started doing this, I said, this is I'm not doing that anymore. There was like something that happened once I started doing this. I kind of, I don't want to say lost interest, but I lost my passion for flying. I never thought I would, but I really don't have the drive right now to go flying. And I feel like I've also used up my 9 lives with all the stories. Julie Compton, hello from Midland, Michigan. I would love to know more about you and your immediate family. I know you cannot be too specific due to creeps, but I would love to know. So yeah, I mentioned I have 4 kids, 3 boys, and just a little more on them. Nathan, the youngest, he's in high school. He's a junior, basketball team. Danny just graduated from Kansas University, Jayhawks. That's why you all see me with the Jayhawks. Spent a lot of time in Lawrence. And he has now got a job at an advertising firm. Very proud of the boys. And Kyle, our oldest, he's out in Phoenix, married to Brittany, and he's got a fantastic job, making money, making the big bucks, way ahead of where I was at when I was 20. I think he's 29. No, he just turned 30, you old man. He just turned 30. That's right. We were giving him a hard time. So yeah, that's the deal there. And J-Bug FG, Ron, what I wonder the most is whether you let a family member or someone know where you go. You visit some pretty remote locations. And yes, I do. Even the hotels I stay at, I let my family know. Everybody, the kids, the boys, I just send texts. I'm like, here, or if I'm at a cemetery, here's where I'm going. So yeah, it's always the safe thing to do. All right, what's up next here? Pepper Moon. Pepper Moon says, do you ever have dreams or nightmares about some of the people in your stories? Definitely do. Not a lot, but there is one, and that is the boy that got the bad grades that killed himself really connected with me because I was bullied when I was in grade school. The worst was more 6th grade to 8th grade. I was bullied by a couple of other boys pretty bad. A guy named Brian Witkowski, who, if I met to this day, I would, I don't know that I could be so respectful and as an adult attitude, we'll just put it that way. And I'm 6'5" now, and I'm not a little peewee, and he was picking on me, he was older. So you all heard the story of the principal and what he did with me, to me. And so, that is the story of nightmares for me, that just brought a lot of that back. The story of the boy that killed himself. Mystic angels. What do you feel sometimes as you walk around cemeteries? Like, do you get pulled into an area or a headstone as you are walking? Yeah, like I said, the chimes, the wind, sometimes I'll hear what sounds like a whisper. And like many too, you walk and just certain things draw your eye. And it's kind of funny where you end up in certain locations for a reason sometimes. And some of it is live when I'm not live streaming, but live when I'm doing the episode. And what I do a lot is when I do my episode, I go I know where the grave is. I have it located, and then I will drive to a part of the cemetery. And I'm pretty good now at judging the length of the story in my mind. So, oh, this is a long one. I better go way over there, or I better walk really slow. So I've been but as you walk, all my walks, there's no route. We just find what we find. But this one that I did in Macon, Georgia, that's coming out in probably 2 weeks. Oh, it's epic. You will see, I did not plan. There's a statue that drew me over, and it's part of the backdrop, not part of the story, but the backdrop, a really interesting backdrop to that story. So yes, those things happen. Deb Sam, do you believe in the paranormal? We talked about that. I absolutely do. I don't believe in a lot of, I'll tell you what I don't believe, those channels. I don't believe in Sasquatch, because we'll start with him, because we would have had game trail footage with the millions, not thousands, the millions of trail cams, technology out in the woods by hunters and hikers, or there would have been a fossil or a bone, a body found. So that's, I don't understand, but if you like Sasquatch, I think it's an entertaining thing. As far as anything else on the paranormal, I don't believe you see these channels on, is it Discovery or wherever, where they're going in haunted houses with infrared, or they're going to mental asylums, and they are creating ghosts. They are creating ghosts. It's all made up, it's all fake, and it just drives me crazy. That kind of stuff. I can tell you a funny story though with my kids when they were in grade school. We got this on the iPad, and I'm sure you could still get it. It's called Ghost Radar. And it would show in the room, and it would show where in the room, and you'd see a presence, radar hit, a bleep or a blip. And then a word would come out, just some random word like cereal or thinking, or just, and you're like, oh, that's the ghost. So I had them all believing that. And then what I would do is take fishing line, and I would string it around the room, connect to things, so they'd all come in, and I'm like, it's Loki. I feel the presence. Look on the ghost radar. It's over there. And then I'd have the remote control of the TV. I had the string, I'm picking up the remote, but I pulled the string, and an angel that was on the credenza would just start to move. It's a fishing line would pull it. Well, one time I went, and they were ah! And then one time I went too far. I didn't realize it, but I had it connected to the phone. And I pulled the string so hard that the phone actually crawled up the wall. And that's when a bunch of kids were over, and they all went screaming. I told them all later, and my son Danny, what's funny is he was so sad to hear it wasn't real. He's like, oh, Dad, you ruined it for me. I thought that was all real. So a little tangent there. But yeah, the paranormal, I do believe that there's energies all around us, and it's happening. And it's not when you try to create it, it's when you least expect it that it will manifest itself. Susan Dean, did your son Did your son that graduated college go to work at your design company? No, advertising. Excuse me. Kelbells 85. I'm curious as to what happened to your daughter and you visit her grave often. So we talked about Milena, who was 21 years old. She was killed by a woman head on, headlight to headlight, full on bad deal in Colorado. Her boyfriend survived and the woman got off with no, very little, get into judges, talk about all that. But we did a video, we keep it private, but we did a family video, and I may show you guys someday where we spread her ashes, and we are at the location and tell a little bit of the story, and you can see where it happened. And I will tell you that when we were there, there was a big rainbow. And again, Milena symbolizes rainbows, so it was, even in the episode, well, you can say it was the light rays on the camera, but it's pretty powerful. But it's family, it's private. I might, I'll talk to my wife and we'll see. She, by the way, likes to stay totally anonymous. She is not into Facebook. She is not into social media at all. And she does not like her name out there in the internet. And so very, very private. So I'm not gonna even say her name, but I'll talk to her. And, you know, maybe at some point we'll share that episode. I won't make sure to demonetize it. I don't want any money coming in for that. But it would be more to just share it with you guys. It's quite emotional. We've got like 5 more questions here. Carol Gibson, when planning trips to cemeteries, do cemeteries require you to get permission from them? I talked about that. Are there any story requests that you have turned down because the stories are too graphic or too sensitive for family members? I have turned some stories down because I think there are some that I could do that I had put down that I could just get massive views. And I just won't do them because I think they're just too, like the one that was borderline I did was the Ripper Crew. And there were a couple of the David Stuckel, and some of them are just, for me, they're borderline. But I tell the story because I want them to be remembered. And that's really basically what motivates me. And I want to share the story. But some of them I don't even want to do, and I won't do them. They are, yes, too graphic. Will not do it. Sue says, I love hearing that you were a pilot, you did expeditions, that you went to Hurricane Katrina, and that you have black labs. Tell us about that. So, got 2 black labs. I wish I could bring them to the cemetery every time, especially Kodie, who loves to romp and run in the car. If you want to see Kodie, the 2 episodes, the Marilla episode and the episode of Jamie Kloss, I've got Kodie with, but dogs are not allowed in the cemetery, so I'm respectful and I don't bring the dog. I wish I could bring the dog. She's such a great sidekick. And as far as the, let's see here, video in Colorado. Oh, Katrina. Yeah, I don't talk about it very much, but Hurricane Katrina. If you go, I'll put the link in. Go down the description box, and if I forget, remind me. But I'll put, I did do a blog post on a blog. I have several blogs, but one was from years ago called Clutch Cargo, which is a famous cartoon character, seaplane pilot in Chicago. So I did a blog post from Hurricane Katrina and just to document the wreckage. And I went down on my own in my seaplane. I got clearance. I was in Macomb, Mississippi, and everyone was staged there and couldn't go any farther. It was all restricted. But I talked to a pilot and he said, just go up on this frequency and you can get access. So I had a whole bunch of relief supplies and I got up in the air and I got a hold of this Black Hawk helicopter and he's like, yeah, here's the frequency for flight control, which was an AWACS plane, which is a plane that's, you know, their air traffic controls all being handled and ground from. So to make a long story short, I got clearance to go in, hurricane relief, and I end up, wow, I unloaded my supplies in, well, I started in Picayune, then I ended up in Slidell, dumped a lot of my stuff off there. And then, it was brutal. That was right off Lake Pontchartrain. And then I flew, they said they need help in Stennis. So I went to Stennis, and I literally it's an uncontrolled airport, nobody there, but it was the staging point of the Army. I forget which branch. I know I say it in the blog, but I literally had to sequence in between C-130s. Landed, everyone's like, what's this seaplane doing here? And of course I had a big thing on the side, Hurricane Relief. And I was the hit of, the colonel came over, oh man, I love the plane. And they let me, I got K rations, or C, whatever the rations. They gave me a cot. I stayed with them, and I ended up with the Manatee County. You had all the sheriffs coming from all over the country and firemen. Oh man, I get choked up thinking about it. But I ended up with the Manitou County, Florida sheriff, and he was trying to help me out because I was going to bring a family home to give them some relief, just a random family. And we ended up chasing looters at night and shooing people off. And I got to tell you, the houses, the trees. I remember we had the spotlight, and I saw stuff like big stuff up in trees. Looked like a toothpick sculpture. But I'll put that link in. I don't talk about that much, but if you guys want to look into it. All right, 3 more. Maria Cervantes. Are you thinking of doing stories on Oriental people? And how about pet cemeteries? Well, I'll start with pet cemeteries. I got 2 in a row, pet cemeteries. And that's when I turned 10,000 subscribers, which is more memorable than 100,000. I don't know why, but that was so big, 10,000. But yeah, 2. I got 2 there. And that was about over a year ago. And then I did, when I did the 2 girls at the Cary Cemetery, I forget the name of the cemetery, but there's a pet cemetery at the end of that episode. So yeah, and Oriental people, I think in the episode that I did of the Whammo, the creator of Whammo, we featured an Oriental couple, but I don't look for Oriental people. I don't look for, which is Asian people, Oriental people. I don't look for Asian people. I don't look for Indian people. I don't look for Hispanic people. I don't look for anybody specific by race. It's just, and I've come across a lot of Oriental people I featured. I should say Asian people. Now you got me saying Oriental people. Asian, not that there's anything wrong anyway. I did that. The episode got taken down. One of my episodes got taken down by YouTube. And it didn't seem brutal. I mean, it was a brutal story, but it was about the woman whose baby was taken from her womb, Marlon Ochoa. I can't remember her last name, but there was a whole Asian, and then also New Orleans, there was an Asian mausoleum I did, where they burned the money. And so got it covered. Sue says, Black Labs, Katrina. Okay, 2 more. Cindy McCafferty. How do you get around the country so fast? Do you drive? So as I mentioned, if I'm going East Coast, West Coast, I fly, rent a truck. And if I do this kind of stuff, yes, I drive. And the reason I move so fast, it seems like I'm just going like a whirlwind, but I'm not. It's that routine where I am getting into a city midday, like Macon. And then when I get there, I'll either shoot the episode, or like in Macon, it was a massive episode. So I shot the drone, checked out the grave, checked out the whole cemetery, checked in the hotel. Well, usually evenings I'm doing my editing. And then in the mornings when I wake up, breakfast, research. And typically if I'm not shooting that day, going to the next town, that's when I drive, from like 8 a.m. till 10 or 11 a.m. Or if it's a long trip till the early afternoon, that's my road trip time. Almost every day I'm moving on these trips. Only one day I'll stay overnight and I'm to the next place. At this moment, I'm going to be here for a few days. So I'm taking a little time off. 20 episodes in less than 20 days. Okay, we got 2 more here. We have Cindy McCafferty. Oh no, one more. That was the question on how do I get around the country so fast. Faith Hutchinson, tell us about the drone and how you set it up to get your destination. That's always beautiful to see. All right, so we call our drone Little Jimmy. And what I do is I basically have a general idea in the cemetery from Google Earth on like what's going, because I always want to come from somewhere cool, some kind of approach, typically, not all the time. So what I do is I have a general idea, but what I do is I send Little Jimmy up, and I'll go to about 300, 400 feet, and then I will just look around. You know, I'm not looking at him. And I do all the piloting through the controller, and I say, oh, that looks like I like that. So then I get it, and you know, it's all just comes in my mind. I can see it. It's kind of it's the creative aspect, and then I will just go way out there, and I'll try to get out as far as I can before it starts saying, hey, you're getting close to. And if you lose the signal, you don't lose, the drone will fly back automatically and land, but it takes a long time. It's like, oh, I don't want to wait. So I'll push the distance, and then I'll try to get low. The lower you go, you will start to lose signal, so you got to be careful with that. And then I will kind of look around, and then I always know where the cemetery. You know, you got to be heading. Remember where the cemetery is. And the one that I'm doing tonight, if I show this tonight, I'm not sure why I'm showing this. The episode of The Legend of Aunt Jenny Johnston. It's in the middle of the woods, and that was hard to bring the drone in directly overhead and find it, but I did. So it's not easy. You know, I think a lot of my piloting skills and knowing the 3 dimensions of flying the airplane helps me a lot to fly. I fly the drone like I fly my airplane, but it's also very hard to get the speed right and bring it in at the right and slow down. And then also get the camera to do, and you have to do everything. You can't do this, and that's what makes it hard. So, but that's how I do it, and I really enjoyed. I try to do it as much as I can but I don't just do it on every episode. It's when there's something, an epic landscape or something cool, or a message that I'm trying to. But I think what's great about the drone is it does give you a feel, because I always want to know when I'm watching, I do watch some of the other cemetery channels, of course, and I always think to myself, I'm trying to get a feel like, what's the overall area like of the cemetery? What's the big picture? So someone had suggested I do Google Earth every time, and I think the drone is a better option. But anyway, all right, that's the end of the questions and answers for this time. I think I was pretty happy with the response. You guys gave me a lot of questions to answer. Thank you. And if you guys like this, then we'll do it again. And if you don't like it, then we won't do it again. I don't know. This was pretty long. I don't know if you sat through this whole thing, but it was fun for me to do. So with that, we'll close it out, and we'll see if we'll do another one soon. Stay safe.